In this video, we will show you how to replace your rear brakes, pads, and rotors on this Honda Accord. This will be located behind your rear wheel. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. The first thing you want to do is safely raise and support the rear of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. Once you've done that, continue on to removing all 5 of your 19mm lug nuts and then the wheel. Now that we have the wheel off, we have a clear view of our rear brakes. Let's start by removing our caliper from the bracket. To remove the caliper from the bracket, we'll be using a 17mm to hold the slider pin and a 14mm to remove the mounting bolt. You'll have one down along the bottom here and a second one located up a little higher. Inspect that mounting hardware, replace it as necessary. At this point, we'll continue following that emergency brake cable to where it connects onto this area here. Use a 12mm to remove that mounting bolt. Now we'll remove the caliper from the caliper bracket. If you have a hard time removing it, you can use a small pry bar. Make your way in between the two areas and gently separate them. There we are. As you remove that, you will also be removing the brake pads at the same time. Something to take quick note of is on the original pads, you should have a wear indicator on the inner pad. Compare that to your new brake pads so you know which side pad you need. The next thing that we'll do is push back the caliper piston and give the seal a quick inspection. To push in this piston, you can't force it in. You have to twist it at the same time as gently pressing it in. To do that, you can use some long pliers or a caliper compression tool so you can twist. We'll take this and put it in the slots on that piston, turn it clockwise while we continue pressing it into the caliper. Once you feel as though you have the piston pushed in as far as possible, continue on to paying attention to the two lines. We want this to look like a plus sign and not an X because the inboard pad will have a locating tab that needs to fit in up along this area. Now, once you've paid attention to that, we also want to just make sure that the boot is not torn or twisted and there's no fluid coming out of this area. This looks fine. Now let's pay attention to the clip that goes along the top of the caliper. Looking along this area, you can see that you have 2 tabs. We'll take hold of that clip, gently tug it inboard, and slide it out of place. We'll just give it a quick inspection and we can set this aside. Our kit comes with a brand new one. Let's pause on the caliper and move along to the caliper bracket. To remove the bracket, you'll find that you have 2 14mm headed bolts. can remove that other bolt. We'll remove the bracket. A quick inspection. We'll set this aside. We will be working on this a little bit more in a minute. Let's start removing the brake rotor from the area. Before we do so, take one of your lug nuts. We'll just start it on here a couple threads. We do not need to bottom this out. This is for safety. We'll continue on to removing 2 Phillips head mounting bolts that hold the rotor to the wheel bearing located behind it. Just use a bit driver with a Phillips head bit. Once your rotor is broken free from the wheel bearing, remove that lug nut and the rotor. There it is, friend. Now with the rotor out of the way, it's time to clean up the mating surface on the wheel bearing where the brand new brake rotor will sit. Use a wire brush, clean it up, some parts cleaner. After that, we'll use some anti-seize. Just going to check this for any raised areas that will cause a brake pulsation. This feels fine. A quick peek along the backside just to ensure that nothing fell behind there. Some parts cleaner. All right, let's get ready to install our brand new brake rotor. Before we do so, make sure you clean both of the braking surfaces. While we put this in place, you need to pay attention to each of the lug holes and also the mounting bolt holes. You want to make sure they line up. That looks good. We'll continue on with our 2 Phillips head screws. Start each of them in before you tighten either of them. Here we are. Once they're in there, go ahead and snug them up. Let's prepare our caliper bracket for installation. We're going to have to disassemble this, lubricate it, and install the brand new caliper bracket tins. On each side of the caliper bracket, you will have a tin. Use a small pry bar or screwdriver and gently pry these out of place. We'll give them a quick inspection, compare them to the brand new ones, and then we can set it aside. Do the same to the other one here. Now, once you've done that, we'll continue on to the 2 caliper slider pins. For these, you would want to take hold of the caliper slider and carefully start lifting it up and out. While you do so, be extremely careful not to damage your caliper slider boot. We'll hold down the boot, grab that, and lift it up and out. As we remove these, we'll give them a quick wipe with a clean rag. A close inspection to make sure they're not rusted, rotted, or damaged. We'll set this aside for now. Do the same to the other. The next thing we'll want to do is clean out the ports on the caliper bracket. Before you can do so, you need to remove the boot. To do that, carefully take hold of the boot right next to where the caliper bracket is. We'll just gently start pulling this out of here. Clean and inspect that boot. Just use a rag, bring it right on through. The next thing we'll do is just roll that slider boot around. And that's going to clean off all the grease that's on the inside. We'll give this a quick inspection. Make sure it's still soft and pliable and it's not torn, worn, or damaged in any way. If it is, you need to replace this. This one looks fine. Now we'll do the same to the other one. To clean out the caliper ports, we'll be using some parts cleaner and a bore brush. Spray right inside here, use the bore brush to clean it out, and then we'll give it a quick rinse and an inspection. That one looks good. We'll do the same to the other. Perfect. Moving along, we'll be paying attention to each side of the caliper bracket where those tins were located. We want to make sure that this is a clean, smooth surface. Otherwise, your brake pads could hang up in the bracket. Use a wire brush or some sandpaper. All right, this side looks good. We'll do the exact same thing to the other side. Once you've cleaned both sides of that caliper bracket, it's time to lubricate the areas where the new tins will go. Make sure you use high temperature caliper lubricant. You only need a little bit. Apply it right in here. This will help with vibration dampening and noise reduction overall. We'll take that new tin. If you were to look in the center of it on the inboard side, you should have a raised lip. That will fit right into this area. Press that in there. Confirm that it's completely secured and do the exact same thing to the other side. Now it's time for the caliper slider boots. To install these boots, we'll use some of that high temperature lubricant and come right inside of the slider port. Now that it's lubricated, we'll continue on with those caliper slider boots. Ensure that you're putting them in the right direction so that this lip will fit into the caliper slider port. We'll come in at an angle and gently press it in. Double check to make sure it's completely seated so no dirt or moisture can make its way into this area. I'll do the same for the other one. Now it's time to lubricate our caliper slider pins. Lubricate the entire shaft and also make your way all the way up to where my fingers are located. You'll find that you have a small groove there that makes its way all the way around. We need to have lubricant in this area to help prevent moisture making its way in. Slide this into place. Once you press it down, squeeze out any air that's inside that boot. There we are. Let's just test its functionality real quick. Do the exact same thing to the other slider pin. Squeeze out that air. Make sure it functions as needed. Let's get this over to the vehicle. Let's get this caliper bracket in place. We'll continue on with our 2 caliper bracket bolts. Start each of them in, snug them up, and then torque them to 41 foot-pounds. Now it's time to install our brake pads. As you remember, when we were removing the originals, I talked to you about the wear indicator. When finding the new pads, make sure that it aligns properly. We'll start with the inboard pad, sliding this into position. Continue on to the outboard pad. Once again, slides right in. Now let's prepare the rest of the caliper. Your kit comes with a brand new upper tin. We'll bring this right in along here. Up along the top, we want to slide it so we can lock in those clips. Press that up, slide it in. Confirm that each of your 2 ears are locked in as needed. Let's use some of that high temperature caliper lubricant. Apply it right to that caliper piston. Once you've done that, the backside of each of these 2 ears. This will help with vibration dampening and noise reduction as well. Let's slide this into place. Start in both of those caliper slider bolts, snug them up, and then torque them to 18 foot-pounds. Once you've torqued that caliper, let's follow the emergency brake cable to its mounting point. We'll continue on by reinstalling our wheel. Start on all 5 of your 19mm lug nuts, bottom them out. We'll get the wheel back on the ground, and then we can torque them to 80 foot-pounds. With the wheel safely on the ground, torque these lug nuts in a crisscross manner. Torqued. Okay friend, we showed you how to install the rear brakes on your vehicle. At this point, you want to make your way over to the other side of the vehicle and do the exact same thing. After that, hop inside the passenger compartment and pump up that brake pedal till it's nice and firm. Take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.